Bonjour la classe. Alors, bienvenue à ce cours de français. Avancez avec moi. Je m'appelle Monsieur McGarry. Je suis professeur de français, d'économie, de comptabilité, informatique et de commerce. J'enseigne ces matières à l'ouest de Dublin, en Irlande. J'apprends le français depuis 30 ans. Aujourd'hui, je vais vous expliquer un guide sur vos examens comme le bac. Alors, on va commencer. Donc, okay, so what I was saying there was, hello class and welcome to this class lesson. My name is Mr. McGarry. I'm a teacher of economics, French, accountancy, etc. I teach these subjects in the west of Dublin, in Ireland. I've been learning French for 30 years. Today, I'm going to explain to you some advice and a guide about your exams, such as the bac, which is short for baccalaureate, which is the French version of our Leaving Cert. Okay, and then I said we're going to commence, we're going to start, so let's go. Okay, so this should help most students, especially Leaving Cert Honours students for French, but there's also a little bit on the ordinary level, and there's also a little bit on junior cycle French and the changes there at the bottom. Okay, so we'll go through it as quickly as possible. Hopefully the video won't take more than 40-45 minutes. Okay, so the overview first of all. The objective is to help teachers and students understand more about Leaving Cert French. My website I'll give you at the end is mrmcgarry.weebly.com. We're going to go through some real life conversational French as spoken orally by French people. Some stuff you won't get in the textbooks, but if you go to France, you'll find that that's the way they are more likely to speak in real life. And then the structure of the Leaving Cert French exam with useful tips. So we'll break it down by different marks and times and tips all the way through. And I'll go through some of the key grammar lessons that you'll need in order to do well in Leaving Cert Honours. And then I'm going to give you a list of useful apps and websites for Leaving Cert French. Okay, so my website is here as well, actually, is there at the top. And when you go in there, there's a tab called French. So click French, and you'll see a number of documents within that. You'll also see a button there. If you click on it, it leads to my documents and resources for Google Docs, which is handy. And please ask questions if there's anything unclear. I'll go through maybe some of my teaching styles. I like to do the KWHL to start a class. That's what students already know, test first. What they'd like to know, how they're going to find out the information and learn it, and then reflections and jotting down what they learned lesson by lesson. And then we like to do an interactive mix, student-led a lot of the time, of reading, writing, listening, and student pair work. And we do a lot of role plays and speaking in class. Technology we use mostly in class will be G Drive, Schoology, Edpuzzle, and graphic organizers. And again, I'd recommend those for teachers and students alike. An exam tip, answer English questions in English and French ones in French. That's a useful tip to start out with. That's generally speaking the way you approach the exams in French. Okay, so real life conversations in French rather than textbook French. Some examples then. I just saw her, je viens de la voir, and I almost forgot, j'ai failli oublier. They often say j'ai failli oublier. Often your French people say that. I heard that, j'ai entendu dire que. That's another common one you'll hear French people say. I got fired, viré, versus licencié. So that's a nicer way of saying fired. It's laid off. French people often skip the ne. You'll see there's a lot of ne in French. So an example of dropping the or in quatre is quatre. They don't really go with the or much at all there. And then se, they don't really pronounce the e there in the ce. And then adolescent is a common word for your age group, and you'll see it pop up in articles, etc. But they often refer to that as ado for short. And then when they're saying ouch, it's a funny, interesting one is aïe. They say that instead of saying ouch. Okay, so French oral tip. French people use on rather than nous, more so when they're in conversation with each other. So we might say, nous commençons, but in France they'd say on commence. Yeah, so they use on. It's not so much a posh one might say, it's more as a lot of French teachers teach it as, but it's more used commonly in France as we. Okay, so layout of the French Leaving Cert exam. So introduction, it's a 2.5-hour exam. You select your written questions, obviously pick the ones that you've looked at the title and you have a basic understanding. You're not expected to know the text and what it means in full, but just look at the titles and the pictures. Which one do you think you have a better grasp of? Then choose that. So planning is very important. Maybe plan 5 minutes for each answer to go to jot down your ideas and the ideas of what you're going to do for each paragraph. Analyze the titles to make sure your answers are relevant. E.g., if it's about advertising alcohol, don't go focusing on health and advertising. So read the question, make sure you're answering what's asked. Use 20 minutes for each written question to expect 75 words, and that's about 3/4 of the page. And then 90-word answers, they're about a full page, they are a full page, A4 page. Spend a max 1 hour on the 2 Leaving Cert reading comprehensions. Okay, and there's a further tip there. Don't write too much more than the recommended amount, as more mistakes means less marks. Time management, answering what is asked, is the key to getting a good grade in it. Also, timing, plan structure, relevance, and correct grammar is important throughout the exam. So it's 400 marks in total for the written paper. You've got reading at 120 marks, or it's equivalent to 30%. And the comprehension is broken into literary text, which is like novels, etc. Journalistic is more like newspaper articles. So there's 60 marks each. So try and work out what the comprehension is about first. You're not expected to translate the whole thing. Use the questions to help you realize what the text is about also. And a tip there is to read question 6 first to help you realize, because that's actually in English, and it'll give you some tips as to what the comprehension is about if you read that first. Answer it last, but read it first. Questions looking for quotations from the text will start with cite, means quote, trouver, find, or reveal, révéler. Other common questions asked, why, pourquoi, où est-ce que, so you'll know when you see those that are looking at why type answers to questions with why. Look out for passé simple, which I'll explain in the grammar section. The grammar question often is found in the second comprehension. Don't include pronouns here and use capital letters where appropriate. Okay, writing, 3 written pieces. The 2 we'll focus on are the opinion piece and the journal intime. Okay, so they're the 2 ones I'd recommend that you do. Opinion piece, question 1, it's an obligatory question. So you have no choice in that one, you're going to have to do that one. And you need an intro saying whether you agree or disagree, first of all. So you can start out your written piece by saying, je suis d'accord avec cette affirmation. In the next paragraph, you could define the problem or topic and expand and connect it to the global world. Aim for 3 strong points, share your opinions. The way you do that is by saying things like je pense, I think, je crois, I believe, à mon avis, in my opinion. Also connect them to the Irish news and your opinions and see if you can back that up with things that you've heard about in the news. Always link back to the question throughout French and most subjects, always link back to the question to get full marks. Excuse me. Next paragraph, give your opinion and how it might affect people's daily lives, including your own. Lastly, give a conclusion, so en conclusion or en somme, of which you already said, and add solutions and solution, a recommendation. E.g., par exemple, I could use my social media to raise awareness of this idea. So that's a way of ending your opinion piece. Okay, the other option you have for your written assignment is a journal or journal intime. So it can be a letter, a note, or an email. Recommend this as the best option because they mark, even if you do easy French, they'll mark it high. So have key phrases prepared and be ready, okay, for with those key phrases. Bring some humor into it. Everyone likes a bit of humor, so you bring a bit of humor into it. You're likely to get the examiner on the side and possibly gain more marks. Quel cauchemar, for example, quel cauchemar je viens de vivre le plus dure journée de ma vie. Oh, what a nightmare. I've just had the worst day of my life, or the hardest day of my life. So that could be a nice way of starting out. Okay, put the day and time on the top right of this assignment, the journal intime, and have an intro phrase. It should sound and read like a diary. So read back up, make sure it looks like a diary and reads like a diary. What happened and what will happen? What emotions did you have? J'ai vu pris de gré, monsieur, l'expression de mes sentiments distingués. That's a great ending for like the formal letters, and you can use it in a lot of different texts. If you're stuck for something to put at the end, put that at the end, and you always get marks for putting stuff rather than having blanks. So use a variety of tense and subjects, don't overuse. For H1, you need to have some subjunctive grammar within your texts to show off your understanding. Okay, French tip, to concentrate on quality over quantity in this section in particular, stick to the 75 words, max 100 words. Yeah. Moving on. Ensuite. So that means then. Listening. So the reason you stick to the 70 words, by the way, 75 words to 100 on those sections is you'll be marked down if you've a lot of grammatical mistakes and other types of mistakes, the more you write. So, okay, listening. 80 marks are going for the listening exam. Read the questions carefully if you can and in advance. Obviously, that'll help you gauge what you're looking for if you read the questions first. Try and pick out buzzwords, and that can be the same all the way through the French exam. In every type of exam, think about buzzwords and what might help create in your mind what the topic or what the title is about. Listen and then write and recheck your answers when you're doing the listening. No negative mark. That's a good thing about the listening exam. If you put loads of answers, they'll only pick out your ones that are right. They're not going to mark you down or knock you for anything you do wrong in the listening. Don't misread the question, as that is a common mistake. Where is what is quel, for example. So for example, so you might be asked what, or you might be asked quand, when, or you might be asked when, and students often confuse that and write down the wrong answer, obviously, when they misread what was being asked. So French oral tips. Listen to the Leaving Cert French CDs over and over again. Watch videos with English subtitles on Netflix. A good tip for helping your oral. Okay, so the French oral. Structure 30 marks for using, so you get 30 marks, there's 100 marks going for it, and you get 30 marks for your using different tenses and using them correctly. You get 20 marks for good expressions and vocabulary. You get 20 marks for good pronunciations. That's how your examiner is going to be marking it. And I examined French for years as well, so this is part of what we would have had to do. For example, examiners could ask you, quel est vos projets pour l'été prochain? What are your plans for next summer? You could answer, j'ai l'intention d'aller, I have the intention of going, wherever it is you attempt to go to, rather than answer with something like, it's interesting, c'est intéressant. Say something like, j'aime ça matière, parce que I like that subject. So instead of saying it's interesting all the time, you hear students say that a lot. I've heard a lot in French oral exams. But if you can maybe expand your answers and maybe add a little bit, it makes it more interesting and it'll increase your marks. Okay, so French oral tips. Practice speaking with a friend in class when you're doing pair work or a friend at home. Yeah, that'll definitely help your French oral. So useful Leaving Cert French grammar, not complete guides. This is just a few tips, important tips on French grammar. So the present tense, remember you have lots of different verbs, ER, IR, or E verbs, and they all have different complications at the end that need changing, etc. But basically the present tense, simple examples, for example, je fais, I do, je mange, I eat, je joue, I play. But in the present tense, they don't say anything different for the ing at the end. So I'm doing is still going to be je fais. I'm eating is still going to be je mange. Okay, whereas in English we'll add an ing and it'll look different. In French, it's je fais does both. Yeah, so it means I do and I'm doing. So the next tense is that's regular in Leaving Cert French Honours is the imperfect tense, the imparfait. When you're saying something like I used to do that, or I used to do it for some length of time, or was doing that for a particular length of time, you use it in continuous actions in the past. J'avais un chien, I used to have a dog. Il pleuvait, it was raining for some time, in other words. Elle montait dans un train, she was getting onto a train. Okay. The perfect tense can be confused, and I remember as a student thinking, perfect, why do they call it the perfect tense? Anyway, just think it as the passive composite, which is just the normal past tense. And the complicated thing with it is that you have to add in avoir and être. So first of all, if you learn off all the avoir verbs and all the être verbs, Remember, être was je suis, tu es, il est, etc. Avoir was j'ai, tu as, il a, elle a, all the way down. Yeah, so you need to add that then to whatever you're saying to say in the past. So if you're saying I finished, you can't just say j'ai fini. You have to use avoir, so it's j'ai, and then fini. You drop the or at the end for the IR verbs. And there's IR verbs, RE verbs, and ER verbs. ER are the most common ones. And then just say you wanted to say I went. You can't just say je allais, and just put the E accent at the end. You have to use être with that, so you go je suis allé. So I know it's shocking, confusing. We'll have to go more at that in class, I'd say, for you to get a grasp of that, because that used to annoy the head off me. Okay, right. Future tense, or future, le futur. You use it also after quand and dès que. Just note there that the day here has an accent on it. That's what an accent looks like. But it should be an aigu, so it should be going in the other direction. Okay, and the most common future endings for the future tense are AI, AS, A, ONS, EZ, and ONT. And remember, your pronouns are je, tu, il, elle, nous, vous, and then you've got ils and elles. So the ils and elles, for example, endings will be ONT. At the end, your news would obviously be ONS, your je with the verb with the ending in AI. Okay, and again, we explained that further in class, but hopefully that gives you a good understanding so far. So common popular verbs, there's irregular verbs. Irregular, when you see the word irregular in French, just means you don't follow any particular patterns. It's hard to learn a particular pattern off by heart. What you can do is you can just learn the regular verbs and their endings off by heart. And we list them that we can provide at the end. And in class, we'd have a list of them as well to learn off. We don't need to learn off the most common ones. You don't need to know all of them, just the most common ones. So some of the common ones I've given you here, for example, a really common one is I will go. That's j'irai. Look at the ending AI at the end of it. J'aurai. Again, look at the ending there for I will have. And je serai. That's I will be. Irregular verbs mean, yeah, you know, so we did that already. That's fine. That should have that in it. Okay, now the conditional tense. Okay, so when I think of the conditional tense, and I want students to think of if statements. So if I had to do something, I would something. That's this tense. So I would go if I had enough money. So j'irai, look at the ending AIS. Si j'avais assez d'argent. As you might notice, the endings are the same in the imperfect tense. So your endings that we had up in the imperfect tense, AIS, AIT, etc., at the end, AIENT at the end for ils and ont. And those endings, again, are the same with conditional as they are for imperfect tense. Now, more complex again is the subjunctive. It's rare enough that it's used in certain types of text, you might see it. But anyway, if you want to get a H1 in honours, Leaving Cert French, it's a good idea to have a few phrases learnt off and an understanding of it, so that you can show it to your examiner that you understand the subjunctive tense. So you only need to learn off a few key phrases, but use it properly. You use it after a wishing verb. So I wish to do something is a wishing verb, with que at the end of it. So he wishes, il veut que je fasse mes devoirs. So that means he wishes that I would do my homework. So do. So that's how fair, F-A-I-R-E, changes in the subjunctive. It changes to F-A-S-S-E. Okay. So French grammar tips then. Here's more tips on French grammar. And again, the subjunctive, there's more to do in class, and it's enough for now. But it's different endings and different things to learn off there too. Okay, but as I said, if you learn off just a few key phrases, that'll be the way to approach it. Okay, French grammar tips. So French words ending in MENT. So MENT in French is equivalent to LY in English. So actuellement, that's actually or currently, yeah. French words ending in ANT, that's usually equivalent to ING. So if you've got jouant, playing, mangeant, eating, yeah. So it's good to keep that in mind. It'll help you with your understanding of different texts as well. And then I promised you we'd have some irregular verbs. So there's a link to all irregular verbs there to show you different patterns of verbs and their endings. Okay, prepositions are those little words before and after different words that you get. Okay, so examples are demander à quelqu'un, so that's to ask someone, so the à there is the preposition. Regarder à, to look at someone, so that's a preposition there. Grâce à, thanks to, yeah, the a there is the preposition. You've loads of different ones, but we'll just deal with a few of them here. So au cinéma are common ones in Leaving Cert French Honours. So to the cinema. Le mardi, so you don't just say Tuesday, you don't just say one word in French, you use two, you go le mardi. Other popular prepositions are the likes of en été, in the summer, mon mais, again, we spoke about s, usually signifies plural, ma, feminine, mon, masculine, same with ton tates, notre, our, and votre, your. And then some other common ones are à Paris. You say à Paris, you don't say en Paris. You say à Paris, because the town, but you say en France. So these are things you just need to learn off. And then en bus, but à vélo. So by bus or by bike. So it's easy to confuse and think it was à bus or en vélo. So you just need to learn those off. So another one there is plus de pain. So that's more bread. But you say moins d'argent. And see with the apostrophe, you've dropped the E there because there's a vowel there. Okay, that's more money. Okay, moving on. SE in French. When you see SE or S apostrophe, it's usually itself, it means. So, se tient, that holds itself. And you've got apostrophe when a vowel comes next to it. For example, QUE is a common word you see in French, but you often see the E dropped out of that, qu'est-ce que. So it could be what, you're asking a question there, qu'est-ce que, or où est-ce que, where is, yeah. And then E signifies feminine, so with that S and X often symbolize plural. La fleur, for example, la feminine, E at the end, feminine. Les chiens, plural, S shows off that that's plural. O equals O-U-X, you see that's plural, and then ES or S at the end, that's plural, and no chien, S and S again, plural, full flare, again, S and S, your flowers. Remember I was talking there before the screen went black, I mean the top corner, à Paris, en France, plus de pain, and moins d'argent. That's the sheet for that, and again, the other thing is I'll have this uploaded on my website, mrmcgarry.weebly.com. You just click French and it'll be right at the top. File at the top of that tab. Okay, so if you don't look at this, you can go back and have that open as you're listening to me on Zoom. Okay, so moving down. This is when I was talking about se. So I mentioned se is reflective, and I mentioned se tient. Okay, so that's where we were there. I mentioned about S's and X's for plurals, and then some examples, and then I gave useful tips and different fillers for sentences like ainsi que, therefore, en général, en conclusion, and then I gave useful apps and websites was the next stage I went on to, and then I had a quick look at the French Leaving Cert ordinary level, an overview of that. Okay, and you can see there message, postcard, diary, or formal letter as one of the written pieces, and then I went on to review a quick review of the junior cycle French, and there's CPA 1, CPA 2, and I spoke about the assessment task as well. Okay, and yeah, I should bring up to speed then, and that was the email and website. Okay, so I said go through a quick overview of the changes to junior cycle French, and you've got a student portfolio and assessment now. In first, you've got a SLAR meeting. That's where the teachers meet together to make sure the grades are all in line. And the class-based assessments are a new thing. They're like new projects to do. So they're assessments in class or class-based assessments. You do one in second year, and it's on oral communication. And then the teachers have a SLAR with that to make sure all grades are in line. And then there's a class-based assessment in second year from December to March. And that can be where you pick your 3 best pieces of work from second and third year, You do one oral, and you can do one cultural piece, and you reflect then on each one that you do. In third, you do an assessment task, and it's worth 10% of your final exam. That starts 6th of January, and you have until the 23rd of March. And you can do it over 2 classes, 2 40-minute classes, 2 stages. If you have an hour class, probably do it over 2 1-hour classes as well. On a piece of work, it can bring reflection notes in. Resources and further details are on the ncca.ie or curriculumonline.ie. En conclusion, j'espère que vous y avez trouvé quelque chose de bénéfique. In conclusion, I hope you found something beneficial there. Finalement, finally, également, also, j'ai fait des cours de français dehors la classe. I also do grinds outside the classroom. Veuillez m'envoyer un email. If you found this guide helpful, please return the favor by subscribing, liking, and sharing. Furthermore, if you want grinds in business, economics, accountancy, computers, get your parents to drop me an email, and I'll give them a call. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.